The CIA has 20 bases in Ukraine. Do you know what a CIA base is? It's a major center of operations. The size of the number of personnel can be assigned to each base can go from, say, 10 to over 100. In Vietnam, which was a 10-year war for us, we had 12 to 16 bases. In Ukraine, we have 20 bases. This is a major effort by the CIA. This isn't minor, this isn't peripheral, and those bases cover the entire gamut of operations from unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, to deep reconnaissance strikes inside Russia, to political attacks on Russia, to undermining the Russian population inside this, to create pro-Russian armies, mercenaries to invade. This is what the CIA is doing in Ukraine. This is a major effort. This isn't a joke. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't a nice to have. This is a major effort by the United States to destroy Russia. The goal and objective of this is the strategic defeat of Russia. Strategic defeat doesn't mean that Russia just gets a slap on the wrist. When you strategically defeat Russia, you collapse the Russian economy. That means Russia goes back to the 1990s. You collapse Russian society back to the 1990s. You collapse Russia politically back to the 1990s. This is literally trying to take Russia back in time. That's what the strategic defeat of Russia is. So when people say, why is Putin doing this? He's doing it to save Russia from this campaign being orchestrated by the United States to destroy Russia. This isn't a game. This isn't a gimmick. This is as real as it gets. Talk to anybody who lived in Russia in the 1990s and ask them how it was. The horror of that decade. Millions of Russians died needlessly. Democracy wasn't created. It was destroyed, not by Russia, but by the United States. There's a memorandum that just came out, published in the National Security Archives, written by a senior State Department official, I think Mr. Mary, who was the Charge d'Affaires #2 at the embassy in 1994. And he says straight up, what are we doing? We are destroying Russian democracy, not building Russian democracy. In backing Boris Yeltsin, we have destroyed the institutions of democracy we claimed we want to build. People criticize Putin and say Putin is the one who destroyed democracy, but Putin didn't inherit democracy. He inherited a CIA gimmick plan operation to use democracy to take control of the Russian government. Not real democracy, but democracy in quotation marks. People need to understand this. I'm not saying that the Russians haven't done anything wrong. I'm sure we can look at things and say they could have done that better, they could have done that better, they could have done that better. But if people don't understand that war was literally the last option, Russia did everything possible to prevent this war. Tony Blinken just gave an interview that gave it all away, where he admits, he said in September of 2021, we began secretly sending weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Why? That's an important date, September 2021. In June 2021, Biden met with Putin in Geneva in their summit. And at that summit, Biden promised Putin said, if you want our troops to stop moving along the borders, then you need to stop what's going on here. Stop the Ukrainian buildup, stop the threats. And the way to do that is through implementation, full implementation of the Minsk Accords. And Biden said, yes, I will instruct Blinken to do this. That was in June. In September, Blinken secretly sending weapons to Ukraine. Why? Had no intention whatsoever of putting pressure on Germany and France to implement Minsk. In October, the Russians confronted the Germans and the French and said, you must do this. And they said no. Why? Well, we now know Angela Merkel and François Hollande have acknowledged that Minsk was always a sham, always a lie, always meant to buy time to build, for NATO to build the Ukrainian army so they could attack and liberate the Donbass, to eliminate, to finish the CIA's job of eliminating the political viability of the Russian population of the Donbass. And Russia said not just no, but hell no. But did they go to war originally? No. In December 17th, Russia provides 2 draft treaties, one to NATO, one to the United States, saying we're not looking for war. We're looking for a new European security framework that brings peace and stability to the region. It was rejected by NATO and the United States. In January and February, Russia reached directly to the Ukrainians and tried to negotiate an end. And the Ukrainians mocked the Russians. And when the Russian incursion, the special military operation began, it wasn't a war of destruction or occupation. It was a campaign designed to get Ukraine to the negotiating table. And it worked. 6 days after Russia crossed the border, Ukraine initiated or participated in the first round of negotiations in Gomel, Belarus. And by the end of March, they had a completed treaty, a peace treaty. A peace treaty was signed and ready to be implemented. And the West said no.
Yeah.
The West said no. So don't blame Russia. Russia is blameless in all of this. Russia is simply defending Russia's right to survive. This isn't a war about Russia trying to destroy Ukraine. This is a war about the West trying to use Ukraine to destroy Russia.